Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
My name's James.
It's a Tuesday. We're going to disorientate people because we're recording a day late, but there were reasons behind it. Obviously, we had a game yesterday, Brentford Fulham, and we had a clash of the correspondents yesterday as well that went out.
It was very convenient. It gave me an extra 24 hours of crying.
We're off the back of what may be for many, particularly within the engaged community and Twitter, as Wildcard week. It felt like so many were on it, including a lot of content creators that were on it as well. And it was I don't know if it was a bizarre weekend of football. Yeah, I mean, for Wildcarders, it was a bizarre weekend of football. But if you go down the results, right, we thought City would win. We thought Arsenal would win. We thought Villa would win. Most people thought Brighton would win, me excluded, but Brighton were going to win. We thought Chelsea would win. You did call Wolves beating Spurs. So a lot of the results went the way we thought the results would go, but whether or not the players returning the points went the way that would have happened. And you can't, it's just one of those things, isn't it? But I didn't wildcard, you did. So I'll let you...
To sum up an anomaly of the weekend, the only team who played away from home who didn't get beat was Everton. So
and they drew.
That sums up a game week in itself. There were only 6 goals scored.
Actually, looking at it,
away teams.
Away team, Newcastle.
And 2 of them still lost.
4 goals scored by away teams, right? Oh, sorry, last night as well.
2 for Fulham last night.
Yeah, last night as well. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away donuts.
I think before I do my team, it's worth saying that we did the chip strategy pod last Thursday. And I think it would have been easy for you to come out of that podcast afterwards and go, maybe wildcarding here might be best for me. And yet you decided not to.
Yep. Tell
everyone about your successful week first.
Okay, so I ended up on...
And just clarify that it's not because you forgot.
No, it's not because I forgot. It's 50. I got 57 points, largely helped by 27 between Salah and Van Dijk. Who the previous week had done well for me as well, particularly Van Dijk. So 24 and 11 between the two of them the previous week when I scored 109 worked really well. I'm up to 167k now, which is my highest rank of the season so far, which 6 weeks ago I was 840k. So it's been a rise that has taken me a bit by surprise, to be honest with you. Other than that, it was Kepa and Ben White. They were my only other returnees. And Ben White came off the bench to return. Kepa, I did expect to return, if I'm honest with you. When you got Danny Ward sitting on the bench, it's not great, but I could have bench boosted and got 19 points because Pereira
picking Ward over Kepa, mate.
Nah, of course not. But I had 19 points on the bench with Ward and Pereira as well. Ultimately, I had an issue. My issue is the blank game week 28, because my team was good for this week. Last week gone. My team's good for this week. It's not bad for the double for a bench boost, because remember, it's your 4 bench players that you want to have a double, right? Really, obviously, if you can get 15 doublers, great. But when Arsenal got Leeds at home are in such good form, or even Kane at Everton away and that kind of thing, I'm not going to...
You got Haaland still, no?
Yeah, I still got Haaland with Liverpool at home. So it was one of those where I'm like, my problem is not this week and next week. It's just the 1 week, which is the blank game week. Do I break my team? Do I break a good team for the potential of future points? And I decided that the amount of thought and effort to find a good wildcard team and who I'd sell and who I wouldn't wasn't worth it. Like, it really wasn't worth it. So I thought, let me just go with it. And it's happened numerous times in FPL before where, if in doubt, do nothing has been my motto. And it's never, it probably once or twice has come to bite me on the bum. But more
like
often,
in Sky last night.
Well, yeah. But that's stupidity more than a 50-50 decision. And if in doubt, do nothing. The added advantage of do nothing is that I go into this week with 2 frees. I only have 1 doubler this week, but also I'm not sure if that's such a bad thing, because I look at doubler? Kevin Ferguson.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but then I mean, Arsenal Fulham away. 2 Liverpool, Bournemouth away. Crystal Palace away for Haaland. Nottingham Forest at home for Kane. Southampton at home for Rashford. Like, these are not bad fixtures.
We said this. No one can land on this week and have a bad team.
I'm really
whatever people did.
Not breaking my team to get Brentford and Brighton doublers this week. I might add 1 or 2. Let's be honest. I got 2 free transfers. Yes, I'll probably add a couple. But I'm not breaking the team to get 6 of them. And I'm not breaking it for 29 yet. So actually, where I'm stood right now, bizarre as it seems, I might use my 2 free transfers this week and the 1 going into 29 to just fix up that bench for the bench boost in 29 and free hit next week to solve the problem of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I was going to say,
blanks.
as much as you want to carry in, or you can carry in people like Haaland, Kane, the Arsenal players, and bench boost with that in 29. Of course you can, despite their singles. You probably don't want to be carrying in people like Pereira, I'm guessing, and doing that.
No. So
despite his 2 returns last night,
Danny Ward has got a double. He's
fine.
already on my bench.
Yeah.
And Nico Williams has got a double, and he's already on my bench.
Auria's already back, mate.
Well, I've got Lewis and Pereira, the other 2 bench players.
And Lewis. So I mean, really,
but I'm gonna be getting rid of them, right? They're not going to be here.
What I'm saying is, this is what you got to consciously think about, right? No shithousery and shit. If you picked your 4 weakest players right now and put them on the bench, you've got Danny Ward with a double is fine. Pereira away to Bournemouth. Rico Lewis at home to Liverpool, who the way it's looking now probably won't play. And Williams, yes, with a double, but he's probably 2 1-pointers.
Yeah.
That's not good, mate.
William, Lewis, and Pereira are the ones on the chopping block. And I'm going to have to sacrifice someone else because I need the monies. And I'm not sure who that's going to be yet.
Have you considered wildcarding in 28?
I don't think I'd make enough changes to warrant it.
So you're saying 28's your problem, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to get rid of, like, on a wild card, I don't want to get rid of my Liverpool players. They've got a double in and I don't want to get rid of Rashford.
Okay, fine.
And I don't want to get rid of Ferguson. So the players that don't play in 28 that I have, Liverpool, Rashford, Ferguson, and Haaland, have a double. Pereira and Rico Lewis don't get me wrong, but I'll bin them now. My question is not so much who am I going to sell.
So if you don't,
it's where am I going to find money?
So if it sounds to me like you're going to head towards a free hit in 28.
Yes, very much so.
So if you want a bench boost in 29, you've got a wild card now.
I don't have the wild card, Jez, because I've got 3 free transfers between now and 29.
Okay.
And I can take a hit.
So you're saying fix the bench with that?
Yeah, fix the bench with my 2 free transfers.
Okay, that's fine.
And 2 in 29. My problem is I need to find some money, and I'm not sure who my sacrifice is going to be to get some money yet. Someone's got to be downgraded. It could be Odegaard, and if I really want to go balls out, Haaland.
I've got 10.7 I can lend you if you want.
Mate, I think you need to use that 10.7 to fix up your team, because how did you do?
My team doesn't need massively fixing up. I was very much on the wrong side of luck this week, as I think it's the story for most people who wildcarded. A tale of woes that even went in as far into the Brentford Fulham game last night, which did at least have returns for Tony. Now finished on 35. My returnees were Kepa, Lewis Dunk with 6s, and Tony 8. Yes, sold 3 Liverpool players. We'll obviously talk about the game. No one can foresee that happening. Salah, Darwin Núñez, and Trent were the 3 Liverpool I had, which would have been 39 points between the 3 of them, which is obviously more than I actually scored on the wild card. But nothing else really. I mean, to be honest, Ben White, I'd have seen the team and gone, yep, happy with that. He's not starting. This is why I've moved that on. Pereira wouldn't have started for me. Danny Ward wouldn't have started for me. So from what I actually sold elsewhere, it was just literally the Liverpool and a run of bad luck with the selections I went with, because my wild card wasn't quite the same as the majority of teams that we'd have seen on Twitter, because I think the template front three was very much Tony, Kane, Haaland. I decided in my madness on Friday not to just take Haaland on, but actually take Kane on as well. And I don't actually regret that decision, because my rank was at 475. I've dipped to 598 this morning. So not a huge fall. It's not a good fall at this stage of the season, but not a, I haven't dropped to like 1.1 million or anything like that. It's not been that dramatic and bad. And that's primarily because actually the teams didn't wildcard. Nearly all the points come from Liverpool players. I mean, too many other scores. I'm sure there's people who do have Ward, Pereira, Ben White, etc. But it's not been huge. It's not like Brighton, the average was 70, 80 or
obviously Brighton players. March and Mitoma, McAllister did okay.
Yeah. But it's not been huge scores elsewhere when you look around. Rico Henry, this is my tale of woes. Rico Henry puts one on a plate from Bumo 2 minutes into the game last night, and I don't know how he misses it. Captain Saka, so took on Haaland, and actually Saka was highly owned captain more than Haaland in like the top 10k and 100k, I believe, which I couldn't believe.
Well, they peppered Bournemouth.
Well, how he's not returned. Odegaard, I obviously kept as well. How many shots Odegaard had?
Well, he was on a Sky shot tier after about 10 minutes, maybe.
He had 11 shots.
Yeah, ridiculous.
On Saturday. Rashford was obviously not going to go anywhere. And actually, he had the third highest expected goal involvement, unbelievably, in the Liverpool Man United game. Yes, more than Cody Gakpo. Maddison and Iheanacho. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think Iheanacho was the highest expected goal involvement of a player at the weekend that didn't have a penalty near enough. James Maddison's put 3 chances absolutely on a plate. The pair of them could have walked away with 6 returns between them in that game. Tony obviously scored last night. Ollie Watkins didn't have a huge amount of chance in the Palace game, but had one monstrous one that he would put away with his eyes closed at the moment and hit the post. So I look at the team and I go, other than Gabriel, they all could have hauled massively. So I think on a different day, I'm looking at this, I pick the same team, and genuinely it scores 30, 40 points more. And we go, that's okay. So, I mean, look, I'm going to go into this week again with no Haaland, no Kane. I'm taking it on. This was always going to be the worst week of it. I think with Kane having Forest at home, Haaland's got an easier fixture on paper. This was always the one, particularly, I thought 27 might be bad from the perspective of those guys, but I'll have gains in other places, doubles. Of course, the woe of the wild card, in terms of the end result, is added by the Brighton problem that Robert Sanchez has given most of us. I also benched Alexis McAllister's 14 points, but I don't know how I would have picked him.
Yeah.
Because all the other guys I picked over him, actually, other than the fact McAllister got a penalty, would have had a higher involvement of expected from the weekend.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm like, if you've got McAllister in your squad, how can you not pick him? But also, relative to the rest of your team, I can see how you didn't. But
we can look back on it in hindsight and go,
is it spread too strong?
You could look, yeah, possibly. And I knew I was going to give myself this headache. But I don't know from these particular fixtures this weekend how I would have found a place. You know, Leicester should they didn't play well, but the chances they had at Southampton, ridiculous. Couldn't be leaving Ollie Watkins out in his form. I'm obviously not leaving the Arsenal players out, even Rashford at Liverpool. Yeah, we can look at it in hindsight. Actually, Rashford should have scored in the game as well. Tony certainly wasn't leaving out with that fixture. So I don't have any regrets on that particular decision. I took on Trippier as well, benched him. That was an easier call, and I know the majority of people look like they did that this weekend. So as much as it's painful, like, the thing is, I always say, when a deadline comes, can you be happy with the decisions you made? And I went to bed Friday night quite happy. Didn't look at it again Saturday morning. I just checked that there wasn't anything from a team news perspective that could impact me. And it wasn't. I didn't log into the website on Saturday morning. I went up to Wolves and had another fantastic day until Tottenham decided to kick off. Actually, that's not true, as we'll talk about in a bit, actually. So, like, if I went back to Friday, I don't change much. I'd still go with the same team. I decided, as I said, with the front guys to go with Watkins and Iheanacho and do it a little bit different to most. Watkins is certainly going to be a target for people very imminently, I think on 28. And Iheanacho, on a different day, we've spoken about his goal record in the past. I felt I could take it on. I think the value I left in the bank, although you could have had Haaland or Kane now. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I could have put them both in. Is about what I do on the other side. The big concern I had as in the other side of 29, the big concern I had going with Kane was I really felt it was going to block me money later on around game week 30, 31, when I'll need to start targeting to get back City and Liverpool players ahead of game week 34 and perhaps target Manchester United players in game week 29. So that was the conscious decision why I've not left the money in the bank for a joke. The money is left in the bank because I've got a longer term plan. Yeah, that plan, of course, needs to change a little bit now because of Sanchez. So based on De Zerbi's comments at the weekend, it sounds like Steele will probably play again. So I've got a couple of choices. One is let it run. Might be wrong. I think we spoke on our Q&A podcast yesterday. I said to you, look, if I had just Sanchez against Palace and Kepa against Leicester, there's every chance because of how Palace are offensively, I'd still be happy to have Sanchez's single. But it's beginning to look like Steele might keep his place. We'll speak to Sam on COTC Thursday, see what he thinks. My best guess is he's going to be very surprised with what's happened. So I can just leave it. I've got Kepa in 28, so I don't need to make immediate decisions. And obviously, if Sanchez is not back in by 29, fine, we're going to get another goalkeeper with a double. He might even beat it if I got to that point. I'd maybe even go Alisson because I've been speaking about the build-up. It might be that a different idea setting my plans was Luke Shaw, potentially for 29, although judging on Luke Shaw's, I'd like Luke Shaw's first half performance rather than his second half performance at Anfield. So it might be I go back to De Gea at that point as an alternative, maybe. If I sell Sanchez, I've got 2 Brighton, and then instinct is to go and get a third one and take the -4 for it. Despite being very well set this week, the instinct would be look at Mitoma or March and get one in. Now, then, of course, if I do that, I've lost a player for 28. But I think if I make that decision, I then lose Lewis Dunk, go for Villa Chelsea defender, and then make a decision on 29 whether I go back for one again or not. And it would probably be a probably not, because I think even if the 31 double happens, which I've long suspected, it's not a brilliant double. It's Chelsea away and Newcastle away. So would I be desperate to have a Brighton defensive asset for them? No. So I'll get through the week and make no decisions, because perhaps something will happen in Europe this week that forces the decision, right? If Rashford gets a knock for United on Thursday, makes the decision quite straightforward. Yeah, fine. -4, Mitoma or Marchin. I'd probably favour Mitoma. And then get another keeper in, of which Rayo, I guess, would at this stage, would, if it's now, is the obvious one just to get in, isn't it? But I think Alisson, Martinez would also be considerations for me, bearing in mind what's to come over future weeks. So, yeah, no massive regrets. Like, the outcome's bad. And of course, everyone will just look at the outcome. But the process, people can say, I don't like your choices. That's fine. I had an idea with what I wanted to do. And I just think on this occasion, I've been a little bit unlucky with the returnees.
I agree with you, James, 100%. Let's talk about some of these games, and then we can kind of get into into it a little bit more and think about who people might be considering for bench boost in 29, if there's some decent cheap options. The more I look at it, James, while you've been talking, I'm looking at my team in front of me. I'm pretty convinced that I'm going to be looking at free hit in 28 and a bench boost in 29. I think Rico, Lewis, Pereira, and Ødegaard can make way for Mitoma, McAllister, and Tyrone Mings. And I can still upgrade Nico Williams to a 4.2, who's got a double. I'm sure there's one out there somewhere. So I think I'll actually be quite well set. And to be honest, if I don't like the look of it, into 30, just wildcard some of the shit and get back some of the players that I want. But I don't particularly see that as happening. So
I think
I'm
for you,
comfortable now with that decision.
Because your team would be quite well set. You've got, what, 2 free transfers? Fix the shit now.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Else.
That's my plan. Like, if I can get McAllister and Mitoma this week for Pereira and Odegaard. I don't want to sell Odegaard, but you can't have it all, right? You just can't have it all. And I've still got Saka and Ben White there. Fine. Then I've got 2 more doublers from Brighton who've got a decent fixture. And then I can fix Tyrone Mings, Rico Lewis into 29 and then make a call on Nico Williams if I want to add him as well for a hit, if it's really worth it or not.
Yeah, I think if I take my own -4, I think Odegaard would be the one, unfortunately, that probably went for me as well.
But his ownership is higher than I like. It's 37.5%.
To be honest, it's more I just don't like the if Paulinho was playing, I wouldn't be so bothered. And you could look at it and go, sell Maddison. Yeah, but then Maddison's more useful for me as well. Part of the thing as well, when I set up with the decisions I made, wasn't just about 29. I said he was looking further on. It's about 30. Take Leicester as an example, right? The double in 29 is nice, Palace and Villa, then Bournemouth at home. Yep. So you're coming straight out of that bench boost and landing on another good fixture. Similar applies to United and Aston Villa assets who play Everton and Nottingham Forest at home as well, respectively. So that was also, it wasn't just 100% focused 29. It was because how often do we do that? We play into a bench boost and we look at the next week afterwards and go, oh, this is shit now. I'm looking at my 30 and going, I could roll. Now, part of my strategy actually at that point would be Tony to Haaland. That's part of the thing. So you can say right now, okay, yeah, would I rather have Odegaard this week than Maddison? Yes. But I've got extra fixture 29, better 30 as well. Like Arsenal go to Liverpool. And the joke's kind of over now, right? That's a difficult fixture again, particularly as it's at Anfield. So it would probably have to be Odegaard would be the full guy for me, I think, Suj.
What about your Brighton players? Because they go to Spurs in 30. And actually, interestingly, like
they'll smash us.
You'd make them favourites, wouldn't you? Like you'd make them favourites. And this is not Spurs bashing in any way, shape, or form. They're just good. And good footballing teams you struggle against sometimes a little bit, where they're just going to move the ball so quickly.
I think that it probably hindsighty one, but look, if there was something, if I didn't know the results, but I knew the outcome, the one thing that would obviously change in the Wildcard was I wouldn't have gone Sanchez, I'd gone a second Brighton attacker. My concern with going that way was I'm going to be stuck with this for a while. If I end up with a team that's got 2 Brighton, Rashford, and I want to get, say, Fernandes in for a long-term period, potentially from 29, I'm looking at a team that's quite blocked all of a sudden in the midfield area, and I didn't really want that. But I tell you what, if I'd have heard the stat I heard last night, which is that since their first win under De Zerbi against Chelsea, obviously including that fixture, they're high scorers on average in the league per game. More than City, more than Arsenal. And that's why when I reflect on that as well, and again, okay, -4 for Mitoma this week. Yeah, maybe even being set in my mind previously that I was going to captain Tony. Maybe that needs a rethink. I think I probably will still captain Tony, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, would I be bothered about playing particularly those attacking guys away to Tottenham in 30? No, like I said, there's every chance it's 31 double as well. But I think I've probably got bench McAllister in my plan actually for 30, Suj, because of what fixtures others have got. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be bothered playing them.
No. Let's talk about some of these games. Let me pull up the results from the weekend, starting with Manchester City 2, Newcastle 0, home win. Foden, 24 points in the last 2 weeks, 2 goals and an assist. We all should have seen it coming, shouldn't we?
He's got an injury as well.
Problem.
I say he's got an injury. He sounds like he's had this injury for months. And it sounds like what we got at the weekend was probably the first explainer of why after the hat-trick in the Manchester derby, why did he suddenly start coming out the team? Didn't make no sense. It sounds like he's been carrying this problem for quite a while. And Foden himself said in an interview after the game, probably in pain for a couple of days and I'll manage it. So that's something to bear in mind, that he is, I wouldn't necessarily say playing through pain, but he's got an ongoing, probably a little bit like with Maddison, an ongoing problem that is there and possibly could flare up at any time. But I think, look, if he's going to play regularly, if he stays in the team over the next few, once we get into 30. I don't think people are buying now.
Yeah,
But
I don't think you're looking at
once
him
you
now.
get to 30, then he's obviously very much of interest almost instantly for me. Southampton, Leicester, heading towards probably doubles in 34 and 37, highly likely. That's a long period, though, for a Phil Foden, who I don't know is going to stay in the team. But I think we all want him to play. We all think he should play. City picked a more conventional formation at the weekend with a truer back four, if you will. Dropped Gundogan in a little bit deeper, but primarily Rodri played as a pivot by himself, more of a 4-1-2-3, if you will. Is probably how I'd describe City's setup with Foden and Grealish really high during the game. I didn't watch the game, to be totally honest. I was in a pub in Wolves with Bradley Parker, Ricky Saunders, and my dad. And Ricky was trying to give me updates of how Haaland was doing because he knew I didn't own him, and kept telling me Aguero scored.
How many had he had?
Not enough, clearly. So yeah, look, booking and an assist for Haaland. Lovely little assist, by the way. But I think this week particularly difficult to, even though it's Palace away, I mean, most people won't captain him this week.
No.
Even of the singlers, you'd go Rashford, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'm really considering Rashford. Rashford or Saka again this week. Big Tasty's back from nowhere.
Yeah, Jamal Lascelles played. We did get wind on Friday, and that was a little bit concerning for me because I did get to the stage in front of I thought Fabian Schär's not going to play. He'd not been spotted in training photos, and I remembered from the cup final, every time he appeared on the screen, it was like the side of his face was getting bigger. So in hindsight, that shouldn't have been too much of a shock. Then I'd seen they'd lost their last 13 games at the Etihad as well. But you remember, this is a very, very different Newcastle now. And actually, tell you what, there's some chances here which won't show up as well on the XG because most of them were completely missed hit. Anthony Gordon, Callum Wilson, Joel Linton, all completely guilty of essentially air kicks when in good positions and with the score tighter as well. So I think all of them chances came before Bernardo 2-0. In fact, I think Joel Linton's chance was about a minute before Bernardo Silva obviously came on and scored and got City second. So Newcastle fans, I think, knew that probably this period of Liverpool Cup final Man City was going to be challenging. Losing 3 in a row is not good for the mind, but I think they'll know next couple's big. They're certainly still absolutely in contention in the top 4. It's not over for them by any means. They've got a good run of fixtures, arguably the best of it, of the challenges between now and the end of the season.
I'm not seeing them talked about as much in terms of, because Brighton have got the double, Brentford have got the double. But if you look at 5 of the next 6 being Wolves, Forest, West Ham, Brentford, Villa, particularly defensively, do we know the prognosis on Schär and whether Lascelles will stay in the team for a little while?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't go near Jamal Lascelles. He won't stay in the team.
No.
Once Schär's fit, he'll come back in. I think a lot of Newcastle fans thought they'd probably move Burn inside and target left back. This seems to have been, maybe it was opposition dependent. Perhaps against Wolves, if Schär's not back, maybe he will do it that way where he can push target further forward from left back, perhaps. That isn't necessarily good news for Kieran Trippier, by the way. Not that you'd bench him, but it's just a note on the side. So no, I'm sure Schär will come back in when he's ready. He has had concussion issues in the past, so it might be that Newcastle treat him very, very carefully. But the fixtures you say, Suj, it's why I kept Botman as well. That was the conclusion. He was the one, I guess the final 3 decisions I had on Wildcard was sort of like Botman, Mings, Chilwell. And you could say those 2 just returned. Okay, fine. I benched Botman. That's more points I could have had. Odegaard, whether he stayed or whether I cut him off early. And the final forward position. And the correct decision from that, ironically, would have been Callum Wilson. Because if I'd gone Callum Wilson, I'd have played McAllister.
Yeah.
But I had a few warnings from a few Newcastle people to say, look, he's not been at it particularly. Isak will push him in the next few weeks and stuff. And I find that difficult to argue. One key note for Newcastle in those upcoming 2 games against Wolves and Forest is Joel Linton suspended. He's hit the yellow cards threshold of 10 games. So he won't be back till game week 29. He could be quite a cheeky one when you get there, actually. I wonder if Newcastle at this point, without him, would consider just going Guimaraes and Longstaff in midfield and changing to a 4-2-3-1, playing St. Maximin and Almiron in wider positions, and playing Isak behind Wilson in the 10 position. That's something we might seize. I think Alexander Isak is really worth keeping an eye on. But otherwise, it's still the defensive guys. Wolves and Forest, the next two, then the double. The double's not easy, but then fixtures running through to the end of the season. Like, they're absolutely fine. So
yeah, I think if people needed somebody now in midfield, and they needed them to play in 28 because they didn't have a solution, like McAllister and Mitoma is the same price between the two of them as Guimaraes and Almiron, for example. And if you needed them to play in 28, I don't think there's that much in it that you couldn't go to the Newcastle guys over the Brighton guys.
You wouldn't buy Almiron now after. At this moment over any of those Brighton guys. In 28, maybe you would.
No, but I mean, if you needed them to play in 28, like if you needed a player in 28, because Brighton don't play.
Yeah, but then you get two games of the Brighton player now. So effective over your 2 weeks, you're getting the same, aren't you?
Yeah. I don't think when we get to the end of 29, there'll be as much in it from points point of view, because the fixtures are good for Newcastle as well. Wolves and Forest.
I mean, Brighton's double 29 is great as well. It's better. Brentford at home and Bournemouth away. It's a very good
Bournemouth away game.
Brighton.
I think they're gonna slaughter them. And talking about Bournemouth, I mean, Arsenal 3, Bournemouth 2. This is a funny one because people will look at it and, well, Bournemouth scored in 9 seconds and Bournemouth went 2-0 up. But the reality is, they were peppered. Like Arsenal, 80-something stupid % possession, ridiculous amount of shots. Just credit to being patient enough to do it. Like, if I feel like we look at this with Arsenal and like how jammy are they scoring a last-minute winner to win the game, and they're going to win the title because they've managed to blag it. If this was United from 20 years ago, we'd probably just say, well, that's what Fergie does, and that's what United do because that's what they used to do. They stayed calm. And they just kept plugging away. And I think champions do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I've had an amazing weekend. What about you, Suj?
I mean, it hurts. But
to be honest, in the ground, it was hearing, obviously, it was at Molineux. Bournemouth for 2 up. And I'm like, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I know they're still going to win. Shut up.
It was never a point. I think when it got to 86 minutes and it was 2-2, 87 minutes, I was like, that was the first time I thought they might not win this. They might just hang on for a draw. But even when it went 2-0 Bournemouth, there wasn't a moment that I didn't think that Arsenal will still probably win this, just because they'll just keep plugging away. And I think that says a lot psychologically for their mentality, that I didn't think they were going to lose even when they went 2-0 down. I mean, it was early in the second half, so there was a lot of the game left.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, I'm sure they deserved it. Bournemouth did have moments themselves, though, it's worth saying.
There's some big chances, mate.
And I think it's worth saying that the 2 goals that Arsenal conceded were quite sloppy. The first goal, they got done over by a kickoff, which isn't a unique kind of Gary O'Neill Bournemouth thing, because I think, I want to say maybe even under Scott Parker when they got promoted. Yeah, it must have been under Scott Parker. They had a brilliant routine they performed at Fulham at the start of the second half, which was very different to this. But it's something Bournemouth have had in their locker for a while, actually, in terms of routines from kickoffs and variations. Partey completely loses centre side for the second goal. And it is worth saying there is a trend here where Arsenal's big chances conceded per game is very much on the rise. And that's worth keeping an eye on for those who obviously want defense. I know there's a few teams who've come out their wild card with double Arsenal defensive. It should be said, with the fixtures coming up, I'm sure there are more clean sheets. Particularly, you look at them Palace Leeds home games and think, yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. It's fine. Then there's a tougher run, starting with that trip to Anfield in game week 30. Bournemouth had no Jefferson Lerma. I think that was a blow for them at the weekend. There was no Traore either. I think we can probably expect them to be a back 5 against Liverpool again at the weekend. We thought that they would do that for this spell at least. They may well do it at Villa Park in game week 28 as well. I guess probably Brighton at home in 29, they might do it as well, actually. So they'll be difficult to play against. I mean, they made the game tough for Arsenal. As much as Arsenal had the shots, I said about Odegaard's 11 shots, right? I mean, 5 of them were blocked. So bodies on the line, difficult to play through. You have to stay patient and stuff. if I'd said to you pre-game, Arsenal were going to score 3 goals, and the only FPL returnee that anyone's got hold of will be Ben White, you wouldn't have believed it, would you?
No, I would have. Okay, maybe
What's
Party
the
might
chance of
pick
that?
something up, or a Gabriel or Saliba, but they off a corner or something. But yeah, that is pretty unbelievable. Now Trossard came off with an injury. We know that Nketiah's not fit. Don't know when Jesus is back. So could you see Martinelli moving through the middle now? They
That's what he
tried to play
did.
Smith Rowe a little bit, and then Reece Nelson coming on. They've got players. It's
Yeah.
just who plays where is the question now.
And I think there'll be more clues this week. So obviously they're playing Europa on Thursday against Sporting Lisbon. So you'll get an early presser on Wednesday that will probably give you some indications. Then you've got Thursday night information, probably more going into Friday as well. I wouldn't think personally that Martinelli playing through the middle is any better for him, because a lot of what Arsenal have regularly done is had crossovers between their striker and Martinelli. They were particularly doing that earlier in the season with Jesus, and I think they'd started to do it again with Trossard playing that position. And if Smith Rowe played there, for example, perhaps that's something that they do again. So I wouldn't say, oh, Martinelli's through the middle, he becomes a better FPL asset. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think it's worth saying. And
Well, that he just plays. Like with the doubt with Martinelli was minutes, mate, and now we know he's going to play.
Well, if Trossard's injured for a significant period, then yes, that is far more likely. Very importantly, yes, that's correct to point out. So that would be good news for owners. Yeah, I think Nketiah's issue is not serious, as in he might even play Thursday. And Jesus very, very close. If he's not back for if he's not back in the next 10 days, i.e. on the bench, then we certainly expect him on the bench for 29 against Leeds. So he's very, very close. So I don't think, even if Martinelli, say, did play through the middle against Sporting Lisbon, I think that could change again as quickly as the weekend. Yeah, the good news probably for him is Trossard's injury, and Arteta's comments after the game suggested he may have a problem. You know, if you're coming off of a groin injury 22 minutes in, I don't suppose he'll be back on Thursday. He's probably missing a little bit of time, but we've got no prognosis as yet. Yeah, as you said, 80% possession, 31 shots. It was the first time they started a league game without Granit Xhaka this season. And interestingly, Bournemouth attacked straight down what I guess would have been Xhaka's side, if you will, considering he'll move out into left wing positions when they've got an attack going down that side. It's also the mad stat I saw at the weekend was the first time they'd started a game without a player who'd previously played for Arsene Wenger.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, Xhaka's obviously the one
played
that's
so
consistently
much
through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, the irony for Arsenal fans will be they probably went into this game thinking get a routine 2-3-0, especially considering Venice had played Everton 3 days earlier, piss off and forget about it. The way it ends is even better. The fact that you've actually gone through that 90 minutes of pain, you go home happier than if you just won. Arsenal fans would have gone home more ecstatic after Bournemouth than the fact they demolished Everton, right? It's interesting how the narrative plays out. And those 3 last-minute wins recently are obviously big. I
listened to large chunks of this on the radio. The atmosphere just sounded ridiculous throughout the game.
Shut up.
And the shout out to Clayton. I messaged him after the game. The photo he sent me back was him holding his glasses smashed in the limbs. Somehow they'd flown off his face and he'd broken them. I just think that they know they're going to win this title now. And go on and do it, because as much as you hate them, of the big 6, they're the ones that I want to win the title.
So Cheikh Doucouré is going to be suspended for Crystal Palace against Manchester City, and that's a blow from. Do you want to introduce the next game?
Okay. Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0. Doesn't sound like, from what I've seen and heard about this, it was particularly exciting. Villa controlled the game, but when you play 2/3 of it against 10 men and they offer no attacking threat. I mean, Palace come out of this with an XG of 0.17 in the end. Routine win at Villa Park, really.
Not something. Neither team had a shot on target till the 74th minute. Obviously Anderson's own goal, Matty Cash cross, Watkins would have been on the end of it. Went in, and obviously Palace had the goal disallowed very early on through Wilf, which was tight offside, but was obviously the correct call.
Off his off.
What's that?
Off is off.
Off is off, yeah, apparently so. He obviously played OOP, he played through the middle. We spoke recently about Palace looking absolutely shot of confidence, particularly after the Liverpool game, in terms of their offensive play. So, interestingly, not just Zaha, but Eze came back in the team. And instantly, that looks like a stronger team. We should remember they finished this with 10 men as well, with Doucouré's 2 yellows. That is a big blow going into the Manchester City game. My only shock is that they're not playing Arsenal this weekend. Maybe Doucouré will get sent off against Brighton next week. Obviously, Doucouré and Lokonga have had a partnership recently, which I've heard be described as a little bit stale and a bit bland, but I think it's possibly made a little bit more solid defensively. I've been looking for a Doucouré partner all season. And it's worth saying, obviously, Doucouré can't play against City, but also Lokonga can't play against Arsenal. So the two of them will play against Brighton, almost certainly, but Palace will need to find solutions for the City-Arsenal games. And it will be a blow, I think, particularly to be without Doucouré against Manchester City this weekend. And, Crystal Palace haven't scored a first-half goal in 2023, Suj.
What's the date? 7th of March. Wow. Okay.
They remain winless. And it's City, Brighton, Arsenal was just mentioned in their next 3. I think if Zaha had a double in 29, I'd be very tempted to go and get him if he's going to play there. And the reason I say that is, if he's going to play through the middle, it's these fixtures in a weird way are almost better for him.
Yeah.
Where teams sit off, he's get left on his own. He can isolate people one-on-one. He's obviously got the pace to get in behind. Whereas you play against a low block who just want to sit behind the ball, and actually in a weird way, it's more difficult for him to get returns than some of these bigger fixtures. Like City and Arsenal, for example, will give him a chance. In fact, so will Brighton. Brighton will definitely give him a chance. So I'd have Wilf on radar. I think for those who are intending on a wildcard 29, should consider him as a very interesting differential for the next 2 weeks, actually. It won't be for me. It just doesn't work for my structure. For Villa,
can I just counter that?
Go on.
For the listeners, he's a troll, and if you buy him, just know what you're buying. I won't go near it.
Wildcard 29 and get rid, right?
They could have Southampton and Bournemouth as the double at home, and I still don't think I'd do it.
If they did, though, this is the point. If they did, everyone would go and buy him.
Sheep, don't do it. James will try and play devil's advocate, sure, but I wouldn't do it.
I don't think he's a terrible. Even those who may be wildcarding this week, setting up for a bench push 29. If he's like if you're leaving the money, plan to move him on to, I don't know, Maddison or even higher like Fernandes or Salah in 29 or something. Like, I don't hate that as an idea if that's what people fancy. He will be a differential. He's going to have next to no ownership, right? He's capable. That's all I'd say. Yes, he's a troll. We know. Moreno started at left back, which I think means that we shouldn't be going anywhere near Moreno or Dean. I think it's too confusing if people want to look at that for bench boost. Again, Diego Carlos, we still don't know where we stand as yet. It would be good, I think, for many people to get information ahead of 28, particularly if Tyrone Mings would stay in the team. Interestingly, Matty Cash, who obviously assisted the goal, got a nice 12-point return, did an interview after the game where he said, I'm very nervous still that I'll lose my place in this team. And that might be because he suffered a period that he's without it. I imagine he will maintain status as first choice over Ashley Young, but I also think that we shouldn't necessarily be surprised if they go to Chelsea on the Saturday in 29 and then play Leicester away on the Tuesday. We shouldn't be surprised if Ashley Young plays one of those 2 games. That would be my take on it at the moment. Not that with the 2 away games, you're probably that fussed. You'd probably be thinking, I don't mind if he misses Chelsea. He can play at Leicester. Mind you might be thinking that the other way around. I guess if he was to miss one, arguably Leicester would maybe be more likely. Where he probably would like Ashley Young as quite an aggressive opponent against Harvey Barnes, if Harvey Barnes is fit, maybe. Kamara's injured as well, which is important though. So he got injured in, I think, Doucouré's first yellow card at the weekend. We think he's going to be out for a month. So that's probably going to rule him out at 28 and 29. And that is a major, major blow for Villa defensive assets. Honestly, it's a big deal. What it probably means is he'll probably move Ramsey or McGinn inside to play with Luiz, which is fine. But it's not as strong defensively because Kamara's the natural holder there. It potentially means you're, from a offensive perspective, possibly more minutes for Bailey, Buendia. I was very surprised that Buendia didn't start Everton. And to be honest, he was a real consideration for me on Wildcard. I just decided I didn't really want to go Buendia and Watkins right at the start. I think Buendia will probably pass me by, but it was his pass for that great chance for Watkins. And I think he will be one, I think, when we get to 28 and perhaps people suddenly look at, the Brighton blankers and stuff and go, what can I afford here? He'll be in a value bracket that I think most people can get to, and then know that he's got a double afterwards in 29. He's got Forest at home in 30. You can look at it for a few weeks. I mean, as runs go, Bournemouth at home, double. Forest at home is good.
Yeah.
So I think Villa, you need to keep in the back of your mind. But I think the big news from that weekend game is be very conscious of that Kamara injury is important for them.
Brighton for West Ham 0. Talking about from a West Ham point of view, because I think it's quite simple and straightforward. Because you go from a 4-0 home win against Forest to go into Brighton, and Brighton in good form, playing well, and absolutely just outplayed West Ham. Really disappointing, because I think the front six, in terms of midfield of Soucek and Rice, and then Paqueta, Bowen, Benrahma and Ings, is the best front six that West Ham can put out. Just didn't get possession and a glove on them, because you just can't get the ball off the guys. Going into Villa at home, Southampton at home, Newcastle at home, I think it rolled out the same front six. What he did do, Moyes, which surprised a lot of people, was trust Emerson Palmieri at left back. But then I think he's in a situation where he didn't have a lot of choice, because Soufal's out. So Ben Johnson's got to go to right back. So then it's Cresswell or Palmieri, Emerson at left back. And he's decided that he doesn't fancy Cresswell, so he's going to play Emerson.
Well, the obvious solution with what he had was to play a back three.
Well, yes, and he didn't do that. But Zuma came off the bench for Ogbonna. Zuma probably was fit enough to play on the bench, but not start the game. And that's the only thing I can think of is why he didn't want to play Zuma as part of the back three there. But I can see very much so in the next few games, Zuma starting over Ogbonna. But we do have a European game on Thursday, so keep an eye on whether he gives him. It's against Larnaca in Cyprus. It's not going to be a difficult game for minutes. It should be interesting to see whether he gives him 60 minutes or 70 minutes, and just hope that either switch to a back three or move Ben Johnson back.
Well, I think what he's decided is he wants to go to a back four, because your big problem this year has been scoring goals, right? You go to a back four, you get an extra attacking player on the pitch. But I think Brighton as an isolated should have been looked at and gone, I'm not comfortable playing him. You said to us last week, Emerson shouldn't play as a left back in a four, and you want to put him against one of the most informed wingers in the league in Solly March.
Yeah.
I mean, the chance that March had, which is worth looking at, if I'd have been watching the game, that chance would have said to me, Brighton's winning here, no doubt. If you look at West Ham defensively, he dances through mannequins, mate. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, the effort to get a tackle in on that Solly March effort at the weekend, who was very unfortunate not to get returns. He's had 2 assists for the assisters. He's had that effort in the first half at 0-0, which was a comfortable save for Areola, but was very badly defended by West Ham. 6 away points all season, Suj.
Yeah, it's not good.
34 points from your last 36 league games.
Really, really bad. Relegation form, no doubt.
Well, it's certainly relegation form. That average will probably just about keep you up, actually. But I think these next games coming up, we've got 3 home games. Villa at home, blank, and then Southampton, Newcastle at home in the double. Feel big. Like we discussed it yesterday. If it goes badly for you, then yeah, we've got to be very, very serious about this, because the home games that follow that are Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, and you ain't getting points away from home. So it is becoming serious.
Brighton, on the other hand, obviously a lot of people already got 3 or are going towards 3. I think the team that they put out, the Sanchez Steele thing we've spoken about is a bit of a question mark conundrum, is pretty much their first choice team. And when they play like that as that first choice team, they're going to score goals. You mentioned the stat already that they're the highest scorers in the league since the Zerbi's come in. Goals. Like I'm glad I've only got one, because now I know the two more that I want to add are attacking players, not defensive players. And McAllister and Mitoma are the ones that I'm going to go for. You know what will happen? It'll be Solly March is the one that will return in the next few weeks. But it's one of those. Take your poison and deal with it, because you'll win sometimes, you won't others.
They are playing like a Champions League team.
Really,
it's probably the kindest thing I can say about them. Jamie Carragher did a piece on them last night on Monday Night Football. You know me, I don't look at the stats too much, so I kind of need them shown to me sometimes. And the progression since Potter, not that Potter did a great job at Brighton, right? But you see they've kicked on again. Everything's up. Everything's up. From possession numbers are kind of comparable to Arsenal and Man City. We've spoken about the goals record since the first win. They had a difficult start, first 4 or 5. I think I want to say they're Tottenham, Chelsea, Forest 3 in a row. Not Chelsea. They drew 0-0 was Brentford away. They lost. Tottenham, Brentford, Forest. They didn't score for 3 games. But since that first game with Chelsea, yeah, they've just gone from strength to strength, creating big chances every game. The XG's up. The one thing under Potter was the conversion was down. They're a splendid, splendid team to watch. The 2 wingers get themselves into very, very dangerous positions, which is why they're both at their value. They're astonishingly good value in FPL at the moment. And so is McAllister, who did play in this higher position at the weekend. He's the one I decided to go with, mainly on positioning on eye test that I'd seen on the games against Palace and Fulham, where I don't know how he didn't return in those 2 games. Yeah, ironically, in this one, it's a flick on from a corner and a penalty is where the returns come from. So, say the logic wasn't quite correct there, but his positioning was high. And I think you can't really go wrong with them. Obviously, you could say, I went wrong with Solly March this week. Okay, yeah, next week it will go the other way and it will be Mitoma's not the one, or McAllister's not the one.
And hold
all 3 of them are really good assets. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable having all 3 of them. But you can make the case that the problem is, at some point, you'll probably have to make a decision to move that. You're going to give yourself a headache every week, because unless you go with 2 up front, and the best enabler is the one you've got, it's Ferguson, and which obviously if you have those 3 you can't have. Then you got no defensive coverage, and a lot of people have got Estupinan. There's a bit of Lewis Dunk ownership like what I've got. And if you have the 3 in there and you've got Rashford, it only leaves you 1 more place. What is it? Is it Salah? Oh, then there's no Arsenal. So having all 3, I think, is quite difficult. Were I free hitting this week, I'd probably consider it. It's worth saying. But yeah, I don't think you can go too wrong with them. It's Mitoma over March for me, I think, if I want to add another. I think that's part protection, because I think that's where a lot of the ownership will go this week for people who don't own. I think nearly everybody who wildcards this week, and there will be a load of them this week as well, will go with Mitoma. I think most. So I think I'd like to cover that off, considering I've got some Haalands, Kanes, some players who've got very serious ownership who I've already gone against. I think I'd like to be on the right side of that one. I think a lot of people will captain this week as well, Suj.
Yeah, and I'm not against it. If I'm honest, you're just not against it. Sometimes you've got to be bold, James.
One additional note on McAllister, which might be off-putting for those who want to add new this week. Tariq Lamptey went off early in the game. And you might think, what's the relevance of that? Joel Veltman came on. Joel Veltman is now, after his chested goal, that was good marking at the corner, wasn't it, Suj? After his chested goal, is now Brighton's highest scoring defensive player. I'd probably not go there at the moment. I would stick to the tried and tested
FPL dunk. Points as opposed to goals.
FPL points, yes.
Yeah.
I would still only dunk or a Estupinan.
Correct.
The reason I say it could have an impact on McAllister is we have randomly seen this at times where Pascal Gross pops up at right back.
Yeah.
And if Pascal Gross pops up at right back, which is something De Zerbi likes in terms of possession build-up, if he thinks there's something he can identify from that position, then he'll drop McAllister in deeper. And there's nothing to say that won't happen. However, on trend, most of the time Gross has gone to right back has been in some of their more difficult games on paper. So I suggest it probably doesn't happen in the next few. but it's something to be aware of. I think like that period, 30 to 32, I think we might see McAllister play a deeper position. And it could happen in the next few. You should be all right. But I think longer term, I look at that and go, yeah, McAllister probably is benchable over that period. If I've got Mitoma as well at that period, I'm almost definitely going to play Mitoma over McAllister.
Let's go into Chelsea Leeds, James. A home win for Chelsea. I mean, one of the things to worry about each and every week with Chelsea is who's going to play. Well, Ben Chilwell played again. No Reece James. No Mudryk in the starting lineup either. They'll be happy to come away with this 1-0. And
oh, yeah, they had to win a game of football, mate. They went very defensive towards the end of it. They played at the start of the game. They started the game with Loftus-Cheek and Chilwell at wing backs. Potter's comments after the game suggested that Reece James is going to be okay to play Dortmund, and I expect he will play either at right-sided centre-back or at right wing-back. Chilwell was very close to me for going in on the wild card because of this. I had a bit of a nagging doubt that Cucurella might play this one and he'd save Chilwell for Dortmund. And I think particularly if Chelsea did go out tomorrow night, then we could expect Chilwell and James actually to play the majority of the games for the rest of the season, subject to obviously fitness. And I think based on what I saw at Tottenham, I didn't see a lot of this game, that I'd be keener to invest in Ben Chilwell at the moment than Reece James. Was Chilwell's corner for Wesley Fofana's goal? Fofana is dirt cheap. He's 4.3, and people will be looking at that. I think wildcarders this week, now that they've got a clean sheet in the bank, will probably want one of Chelsea. I would probably play the extra for Ben Chilwell, would be my take at the moment. I think Fofana, you've got to know that he's been out for so long. If you're doing it now because you're bench boosting and you want a guaranteed double, I don't think anyone can tell you that's going to happen, or guarantee that he definitely plays at Everton at home in 28. That applies to the majority of players. Offensively, I still think they're worth skipping. Although one note from the weekend, Potter did confirm that Kai Havertz will be the penalty taker now.
Right.
If they get any, if that's of interest to people. Felix hit the bar at the weekend, was very unlucky of an effort, but let's be honest, the returns are not there for the attacking players at the moment. You couldn't pick a Chelsea player over a Brighton player at the moment.
Not even. I don't even know. Like Fofana, it just all smacks of.
Well, Kepa's still the best one. He's the best one.
Well, that's it. And I don't want double defensive. Like if I didn't own Kepa, sure, I might think about Chilwell or Fofana, but I'm not going double defensive. So leave Kepa be.
No, I don't hate it. That Everton at home 28 in the blank is the best fixture. And 29 is 2 home games, Villa and Liverpool. Then it's Wolves away 30. They're not exactly the best defensive team in the league. So then you can make a decision. 34, they may double, although the way it's going to work out for them, I suspect Chelsea will double in 37 rather than 30, 34, if obviously United beat Fulham in the Cup. And Wolves in 30, it's not something to be scared of. So I think certainly defensively, Chelsea be getting a good look from people this week. If it was me wildcarding again, I'd probably take a chance on Ben Chilwell personally. For Leeds, no Nonso in the lineup. It's probably the headline one. And they're another one where they play in 28, it's Wolves away, and double in 29 is good and bad. You've got the most difficult away game and then arguably the easiest home game with Arsenal away and Forest at home. So I think people are looking. I think the one people really want some information on at the moment is Somerville. I think my take is, yeah, and his dirt sheet's like 4.2. And we spoke about him a lot prior to the World Cup. We're very, very interested. He went on a really good little run with Rodrigo. Problem is, I just feel like he's taking out a midfield spot that's going to be way more useful to you. I don't think that's where you really want to be scrimping over.
Yeah,
there's loads of good players.
The jump up to March is only 0.9.
There's loads of good midfield options at under 5 million, but I don't know if any of them are worth getting when you can jump up to. It's not even just the Marches, the Matomas, it's the Buendias and stuff as well, who I'd be more interested in at the moment. I guess he's the one people may be looking at. I think because it's Arsenal in the first part of the double, not too many looking at defensive players. No Bamford at the weekend as well, and that would be way too punty, I think, for people wildcarding now. So I think Leeds will probably largely get overlooked, to be totally honest.
Do we go to the Midlands, James? Do you want to go to the Midlands?
Been loads of times, mate. It's the West Country, technically. Can we call it the Midlands?
Well, that whole band in the centre of England. Wolves 1, Spurs 0. I haven't watched the game, but from everything I've heard and understood, you were all right in the first half, and you just
we were
progressively just collapsed and fell apart as the game went on. And there's a lot of rage at the
we were the rage. The rage stems from doing the travelling recently, going to Leicester, going to Milan, going to Sheffield United, losing all of them. And then you take this one as the fourth kind of and final straw. I tweeted after the game that I don't know how any Tottenham fan who went to all 4 of those away games like I did could actually want Antonio Conte to still be manager next season. This bland shit. That's the point. I watched Brighton, and admittedly they've got better players than us. But people go, "What? You ain't got better players. You've got Kane, Son, Kulusevski."
Listen, I get it.
In the spine areas, the Casados, the McAllisters, the Dunks and stuff, it's better than what we've got. I promise you. But I look how they play and stuff, and they're not the only ones who obviously play better football than us. The majority of the league plays better football than us. However, remove that for the moment. Actually, this performance wasn't bad in the first half. Wolves didn't have a single shot. I don't know how we didn't go in half-time leading. We hit the woodwork twice. I mean, we didn't hit the woodwork twice. That's not true. Saar made one brilliant save from Kulusevski. Porro obviously hit the bar with a free kick. Son hit the woodwork right at the start of the second half. Complete control. Wolves didn't have a single shot, not a shot attempted in the first half. And you go to a place like that, and I've been there a number of times. It is one of them places where the atmosphere can get up and you can feel like you're buckling. They were completely quiet because they didn't have anything to get behind and support. We were in complete control, and that first half performance was pretty good, actually. And then their manager changed the game. So he decided at half-time, and they'd had issues when Diogo Costa went off early in the first half with an injury. Jimenez had to come on. I suspect that probably made them a little bit more mobile in their movements, actually. But he decided to match up against us, went to a back 3 in the second half, which primarily he's not done. And it did escape that early Sun moment in the second half. But then after that, the game got away from us, and they were far the better side in the second half and created some good opportunities. I didn't overly think they were going to score, to be totally honest, especially when it fell to Traore. I wasn't completely shitting myself, but he's finished it quite well. Actually, the reality is I could whinge and moan about it, but we were a little unlucky at the weekends. I think on a different day, we have that game won by half-time. But there are problems in the team. The big one from the FPL perspective, obviously Kane blanked, but it's worth saying for that Kulusevski effort and Son's effort in the second half, they were both from Kane passes. So easily could have come away from the game with a return.
Why is that a problem?
What's that?
As you say, it's a problem for people that Kane's blanked, but why?
Oh no, it's a problem that he's blanked because it just didn't return.
It's 1 week no return.
But it's not
return. It's not a.
Oh no, it's Forest at home this week. You're not.
And then
you've got
Everton coming up and stuff. Yeah, Kane for me is now he's just sitting there. I've got no reason to need to sell him at all.
Particularly if people are wildcarding in 29, I think Forest and Southampton, there's every chance you want to go and buy. You could even make the case if you were under that scenario, wildcard in 29 and no money in the bank, like consider Haaland to Kane. Because Forest home, Southampton away. It's worth saying, though, he's not really hauling. He's been returning consistently all season, but he's not really hauling. And one of my decisions not to go with him was, I'd said to you, I think if I go there, I want to know that he's a competitive captaincy choice for me in 28. And my conclusion was that I'd probably captain Saka or Watkins ahead of him. So that's part of the reason deciding not to go there. But yeah, I mean, those next 3 fixtures should be great. The problem is I don't think Tottenham will score big in them. Like if you said to me now across those 3 games, how many goals did Tottenham score? 4, maybe 5. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be massive, to be honest. Now, listen, we could score 4 and Harry might get all of them, right? And that's great for you, obviously. The other attacking player's just not doing it at the moment. He rested Dyer. Dyer's suspended for the Milan game. So I think what he wanted to do was have a look at a back 3 and how it would work without Dyer. The reality is actually in the first half, it worked pretty well. But then it buckled a little bit second half under that pressure. I could not believe that Emerson Royal wasn't in the team. Couldn't believe it. Absolutely staggered. in hindsight, again, it was probably a good fixture actually. We'd said the West Ham game maybe for Porro, and Porro's performance was fine generally.
Well, he picked up 6 FPL points because he came off before you conceded.
He came off before the goal, and no, the goal didn't come down Emerson Royal's side. Royal will play against Milan. If you've gone there, and I know a few people will have gone there, and I did say it will take one bad performance, it'll change. It didn't even take a bad performance, it changed. Because the reality is Tottenham spent £40 million on a player. They weren't just going to just keep leaving him out of the team. Give him some. I would personally play both of them on Wednesday. Play Emerson right-sided centre-back, and I play Romero essentially. That's just me. But if you've bought, what does it mean for like Forest on Saturday? Well, I've got to be honest with you. If Porro doesn't start on Wednesday, and he may do now, but if he doesn't, then I think he probably will do against Forest. So, yeah, you'll have a dilemma. There will be people listening or viewing who have gone for Emerson, and you've got a dilemma. The information Wednesday night will be particularly important. But then I would never have foreseen Royal not starting this game. Wouldn't have foreseen that at all.
Let's talk about Southampton 1, Leicester 0. A lot of people would have gone to Leicester players because their fixture run
it's just me, Suj, I think.
Is decent. Nah, mate. You know what they do? They copy us content creators. No, so a few have gone in on a few Leicester players. When I saw the team, the teams, I should say, the thing that stood out most to me was seeing Theo Walcott in the Southampton lineup.
But Matt said he played really well, and I don't disagree with that.
Guys, like, do you know what? I think when he's got a lot of Premier League experience, right? So they're in and around. He knows the Premier League and he knows football. Whether or not he's still got the pace or what have you, he's probably got the brain for it still. I was quite surprised just to see that. It felt like a blast from the past suddenly popping out into the team sheet. But I looked at the Leicester team and I'm like, yeah, they're probably going to win this. Their team looks all right, and I didn't think Southampton's looked particularly threatening or scary. But home win at St Mary's, and I think that their manager's now won 2 of his 3 games, right?
That sounds.
Or was it were they managerless
right
in the first one? They won 2 of their last.
No, he
3.
won at Chelsea, didn't he?
Yeah, he was the manager for that. Yeah, so 2 of his 3 he's won.
He was also manager for the team that lost to Grimsby last week.
That's true.
If you want to really blame someone for why you wildcarded, maybe blame Ruben Sellers and Southampton, because no one thought Southampton Tottenham was going into 28. In any case, it didn't make a difference for me. Southampton will know they got away with this a little bit. I don't think either side particularly played well, but Leicester had enough chances that on a different. And then remarkably, that's Southampton's first home clean sheet of the season. As I told Matt, there'll probably be a second one in game week 28 because I've booked my trains. So you know the inevitable 1-0 Southampton victory in 28 is coming. I've booked trains that I don't even know are going to run, by the way. Saints changed to a 4-2-3-1. Alcaraz, who is 5 million, played in the 10 position. But he did go off injured. He injured himself celebrating his goal, which was very well taken. James Ward-Prowse missed a penalty saved by Danny Ward. Yes, that Danny Ward. Can save things sometimes, although arguably should have done better with the goal. Matt said he thought Ward-Prowse would stay on penalties, and I guess it'll be a temptation for people with the double coverage for 28. But in all honesty, as discussed on COTC with Matt yesterday, Saints are probably just avoidable here at the moment. I mean, I don't know how you would pick a Brighton or a Brentford player after a Southampton play, even if you wanted Ward-Prowse. Like if I was going Ward-Prowse and Wildcard this week, I'd have to have 6 other Brighton and Brentford players, I think. Maybe I was going double Brighton defensive, double Brentford defensive. Okay, maybe there's a case for it. But no, generally I think they're avoidable still. And it's a rough double, right? Going to have United potentially on the rebound Sunday, and then Brentford have lost 4 games all season. Then Tottenham, jokes aside, is a difficult fixture 28. We've spoken about the importance for West Ham in 29. Then it's City in 30. Like, it's not a...
Yeah, no, not
there's
a place
still,
to go.
There's still rough stuff to come for Southampton. They go to Arsenal in 32 as well. So, avoidable. For Leicester, no regrets on the Maddison and Iheanacho choices, honestly. As said, I may discard Odegaard before I discard Maddison this week. Iheanacho I need to be cautious of in the fact that if he suffers badly with confidence, and he may well do, then he could easily come back out the team. But he's probably a bench for me this week. with the fixture against Chelsea. And listen, if he does well and returns and is sitting on my bench, I'll be happy because it looks good for the future weeks after that, I would say. I don't think investing in Leicester this week. Wildcarders, I think, should be aware, like I said, 29 double is good, and then the 30 fixture is good as well. And that's more than Manchester United, I think, have difficult 29 double. Villa have difficult 29 double. Then they have good fixtures, 30. Leicester, I think, have the combination. And that's why I went with the two offensive players. And I won't even rule out Danny Ward being my... Now I've missed the 11-point haul being my solution to Sanchez and going, fuck it, yeah. He doubles 29 and he's cheap.
Go back.
And I think, yeah, you absolutely can still consider Danny Ward. And I'd rather do that than go for Wout Fass, who's cheap or something like that. I'd rather just have Ward sit on the bench all season long, I think.
Yeah, he's looking like a little bit of a touch for me to have in there. I'm not with Danny Ward there. I'm definitely not adding a second defensive. There's no chance. They've hardly been keeping clean sheets.
No, I think Castagna in a few teams, and just on that possibly. I don't want to
double up.
No, well, the thing is as well at the moment with who got injured? Christensen. Christensen's out for a month, so he's probably out of 29. So in terms of your minutes, yeah, fine, you're safe. But at the moment, he's covering up left back, and they've switched it up since Tete arrived, where they had that imbalance where Maddison was coming off the right and whoever played right back was bombing on. From the full-back positions, he's not happening in the same way at the moment. That doesn't mean that he's priced that he's necessarily a bad pick, and that's probably who I'd go for, but no real interest for me personally.
No. Maddison and Iheanacho, if I was going to get, I would have gone last week, but they're too expensive for me. I just think there's Iheanacho not interested, and Maddison, I'd rather buy the 5.5s at Brighton and even maybe Newcastle. So yeah, understand. Let's move on to Sunday, James. We've got Nottingham Forest 2, Everton 2. Damari Gray obviously putting them ahead with a penalty. Brennan Johnson popping up with 2 goals. It's a bit of a mixed bag with Nottingham Forest. They've got some good fixtures, like that Wolves home game.
They've got a great 29 double.
But I'm not buying now. I'm not going near them for Spurs away, Newcastle at home.
Why not?
I think Brennan Johnson is an interesting player. He's been through periods of like 5-6 blanks in a row. Then he pops up with a couple. Then he goes through periods of blanks. He's 5.7, James. It's just not justifiable at the price. I think there's better players at cheaper value.
I think I missed our correspondent, Mr. Southerns, who's got him in his team, will tell you that maybe he is at the moment. It was a player that I gave some thought to. Him and Gibbs White.
Sorry, I don't know why I thought he was a midfielder. He's a forward. So scrap what I said. Forward is different. There's not as many players at that value. Forward. The midfielder's plenty, but forward not so much.
I gave some thought to him and Gibbs White Friday night, because essentially my final choice was forward. And as I said, Iheanacho, Watkins, Wilson, Kane, Haaland, were all under consideration. You start looking at alternatives because it was kind of final spot for me. And what I quite liked about it in a weird way was knowing that I could bench him this week coming, because everyone's got a fucking benching headache this week. But if you had a Forest player, I think you'd probably bench it this week. Been one of the few teams who on paper don't have a good fixture, but do have a good 29 double. The thing that really put me off was knowing I'd have double Newcastle defensive 28. And going against it. But in terms of the double 29, great. It's also the fact that I think I preferred Iheanacho and Watkins, to be totally honest. But he wasn't a player out of consideration. Neither was Morgan Gibbs White. I like both of them. I think they're both decent value, but I don't think I'd want them for much other than specifically the 29 double. But if I walk into the problem where Iheanacho comes back out the team, Johnson will be right near the top of the list of people that I consider, Suj. But just get him in. Okay, it's probably a little bit too expensive to bench it, but then move it on to something else as I head towards 34. So, no, I think Johnson's reasonable. If I was wildcarding this week, considering a lot of other players are blanked and there'll be value investment in him this week, you could bench him this week. You absolutely could. I wouldn't rule him out returning at Tottenham, by the way. But I think with their away record and stuff as well, you probably think, they've been poor away from home, haven't they? And I would expect my team to beat them at the weekend. But you could bench it this week. 28, fine, he plays. He's on pens as well. So there's that. And the 29 double is good. You could make a case to say Forest double in 29 might be the best. Wolves at home, Leeds away. But then it's Forest. And defensively, I
the
wouldn't
Leeds
look at
away,
the moment.
their away record's so pony. I don't like that Leeds away fixtures, making it one of the best. But I know where you're coming from.
They're capable. They're capable.
Yeah.
I know a few have been asking about Forest defensive assets. And they were last week. I keep saying I really don't want you to go there at the moment. Navas should be okay for this period, but you're basically playing with their reserve centre backs at the moment, and you can see there are frailties there. Everton could have won this at the weekend. They easily could have lost it as well. I actually really enjoyed the game. It was physical. Let's say that there was a lot of heavy challenges in the game, but I quite enjoyed it. It's the one for you, obviously. Oria's back in for Nico Williams. Ben Godfrey played left back. Damari Gray played up front and obviously scored the penalty. Doucouré scored his first goal for a long time. I think Everton probably did deserve what they got out of the game, a point. I don't think that's a terrible result from considering Forest's home record. Everton would hold no interest at this moment.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. Let's talk about the evening game, which ended up being bonkers. For anybody that's not a patron, I know you're planning on doing a Talking Tactics this week on Liverpool and what's happened. And it is one of the favourite bits of content that our patrons advance here enjoy, a real breakdown of this. Based on the first half and based on some of the stats in terms of 8 shots on target, 7 goals for Liverpool. And Man United weren't bad in the first half. It was only 1-0 at half time.
No, I intend to watch it back because I didn't feel at half time that Manchester United had been that bad. No.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those where, yes, it's going to really sting for Manchester United, particularly because of what happened last season with Liverpool giving them a couple of big slaps as well. And the nature of it against your rivals at Anfield. But they've just come off the back of going through against Barcelona. They've won the cup a week ago, or whatever, 2 weeks ago. They've lost track of days, mate.
8 days. 9 days.
It's not in the context of the season, it's not crazy, because this time last year I heard that United were 30 points behind Liverpool this time last year, and they're 7 points ahead of them this season. So if you zoom out a little bit, it's not disaster. If you look at it in isolation, that collapse in the second half
in terms
is
of
disaster.
In terms of, I think any hopes of the title had already gone. Are they still comfortable for Champions League qualification? From that perspective, is it a disaster? No, it's absolutely not. It's not at all. The manner of it absolutely is. It's completely unacceptable.
It is, but I think they look, the 4-0 in the first half against Brentford was unacceptable, and Eric Ten Hag put it right. So I don't think it's panic stations or shit the bedtime at all for them. I just think it's a bad day at the office. I fully expect them to win again next week.
But they've got Southampton at home, so you would. It should, in theory, be a good fixture for them. It's probably good that they've got Betis in Europe, so get a big game mentality going back again. There is a danger for United, I think, that the league season could limp into insignificance. So I don't think nobody thinks they'll win the title, and nobody thinks they won't finish top 4. So we should be conscious of that, I think, in the run. And that's not to put anybody off getting United assets for now or even the double. I just think a little bit further down the season, and bearing in mind that we'll have doubles 34, 37, if they continue to progress in Europa, don't be surprised if a few dodgy lineups get thrown out in the Premier League. That's all I'd say. And they will have put themselves in a position where they can do that. If they put themselves in a position, I should say. Tactically, there's a few things to pick out. I think obviously Harvey Elliott played really well. I think Gakpo's positioning was really key, where he drew into this left half hand space. And I don't know if Ten Hag's selection forced what happened where Andy Robertson got so high in the game that essentially it allowed Nunes to kind of come off left wing and move into central positions, and Robertson effectively became the left winger through the game and just pushed United back on that side so much. And the reason I say I don't know if it's how United set up forced that was obviously Fernandes where he played. So I think we all know that there's a Trent weakness. And I think all of us looking at Rashford against Trent and thinking, fancy you fancy Rashford here, don't you? And I can understand the idea of Rashford through the middle, but you've also given your most creative player in Bruno Fernandes a very defensive job, because essentially it felt to me like his job through the game was just stop Trent. And actually, despite this mauling that then occurred, Trent didn't have much offensive involvement in it. And I think that's because there was a consciousness to try and stop that side of the pitch. It didn't stop the ball getting into Salah. Liverpool still found that quite easy. And part of that was because Elliott played a much more advanced position. And because of that as well, it also meant Trent put brakes on a little bit with the ball as well. So there were some interesting things that were little quirks from Liverpool during the game, who largely played well throughout. Just about every Manchester United player was subpar. I mean, I mentioned Luke Shaw earlier. I actually thought he had an outstanding first half. He came out the second half like he'd never played football before. He wasn't the only one. Casemiro, we've praised, so we've got to criticise. Just wasn't in the game. Wasn't right. The way the game ended, it shouldn't have ended like that. United's two performances in the 5-0 or 4-0 defeats to Liverpool last year were worse than this one. But it's the manner of what happened in the second half. And the difference with this one to the other ones is Liverpool didn't take their foot off the gas this time.
Yep.
They were like an angry mob who went, we are going to destroy you. And every time they went forward second half, you thought they were going to score. And United, experienced Manchester United players, absolutely collapsed and wilted. And it's not the first time they've conceded a lot of goals away from home this season. 6 at Man City, 4 at Brentford, as you said, conceded 3 at Arsenal. They've had some big away games that have conceded a number of goals this year. And that's something to keep in mind. But I think largely we've praised them for very much since the World Cup at the very least. And this was a blip, but a very, very heavy blip. It's a difficult one to accept if you're a fan, mate, when that happens. That's too much. I also don't think it means, oh, Liverpool are back. And I do think Liverpool will go and finish fourth from here on in. And they'll have the momentum to do so. But there were still vulnerabilities, very much so in that first half. Rashford controls football better. He puts Man United 1-0 up in that first half. So there were still vulnerabilities for them as well. I still think you can play through them. I still think they may have some results this season that shock and surprise, like playing against Bournemouth. You could say, oh, they battered Man United, they'll batter Bournemouth. Bournemouth will play that back 5 again, and there's no guarantee of that. Now, listen, Bournemouth have played that against City and Arsenal and still conceded 7 goals. So there's nothing to say Liverpool won't do similar, right? But if you watch Liverpool play at Palace, you couldn't believe what happened yesterday. No. If you watched them against Real Madrid, you couldn't believe what happened yesterday. Not yesterday, on Sunday, sorry. So really, really good performance from them. Obviously, it's great. It's a huge morale boost for the rest of their season. Mo Salah has 79 FPL points in his last 5 games against Manchester United.
Wow.
I know. It's mad, that, isn't it? Did you sell him this week? No, just me.
I'm likely to hold him in the double. I mean, people look at it as City away, Chelsea away. Away, they can counter, right? Liverpool are good at counter-attacking. I'm going to hold Mo through. Van Dijk, less. I mean, they've just come off the back of 5 clean sheets in a row.
Yeah.
And Van Dijk's okay. I'll definitely keep him this week, obviously, for Bournemouth. But whether or not he's a sacrifice in game week 29, because it's Arsenal straight after in game week 30 as well. I haven't got any value tied up in Van Dijk. I might move him on because it's an easy way to free up $1 million or 2. But Salah, he stays for me, mate. He stays.
Yeah, and get that. It's absolutely fine. I think good fixtures probably for Darwin Núñez as well. I think he's doing really well recently, and people have stopped talking about his misses, haven't they? Now he's scoring. No one's talking about it much. Well, actually, yeah, Mr. Chaos is a decent player, I think, actually. And yeah, they're both reasonable holds. I think for me on my strategy with the 28 blank and needing Brighton United players, it had to be sacrifices. I chose that. As I said, I'm part considering Alisson this week to maybe fix the goalkeeper problem. I don't think I'll go that way. But yeah, Liverpool players will be on radar for me. I think from 29, I'll have money in the banks if I decide I want to get Salah or Núñez. Well and good me saying, oh yeah, I'll maybe get Johnson for 29 if I've got an Iheanacho problem there. But actually, possibly more likely to go, I'm going to have Núñez for the rest of the season here. Is possibly maybe a more likely decision at that point, for example. They do have Arsenal in 13,
Mm.
and that also impacted
It's
my decision.
Anfield, but
It is.
still,
And
Arsenal's
also,
just
if
in good
the
form.
fixtures don't look as good, if you're like me and thinking you're probably free hitting 32.
Yeah.
As that's when they've got Nottingham Forest at home. But they do have a good run in of fixtures after the Arsenal game on a whole. And I will certainly want to be reinvesting in them. No one predicted this happening. It's a freak. I mean, the reality is, what did they have? 8 shots on target, you say?
Yeah, 8 shots on target, 7 goals.
The XG, what I would say is when the team wins 7-0, you won't see an XG of Liverpool's XG was 7.
No,
right? If
never.
a team scores 7, they're gonna fucking outperform what they're doing. The XG was big.
Yeah,
and that second half was ridiculous.
What's the XG? Let me
I
get
think they
it.
were about
for
3.9, I think.
2.78 according to SofaScore.
All right.
So a little lower there. United were less than 1, 0.82. Let's move it on, James. Monday night football was Brentford 3, Fulham 2. I thought Brentford would win comfortably in this.
They were good.
They did outscore Fulham on the XG. I think they just sloppy with letting the second Fulham goal.
Oh yeah, game was finished.
But yeah, not bad from Brentford at all. I mean, they keep marching on.
Although I should say, because I say it a lot, I can't ever remember a Brentford goal conceded where I could put some blame on David Raya, but I would on that second Fulham goal yesterday. Tony, no booking. It was the first bit of luck all season. Well, not all season, all week, because he absolutely should have been, and he arguably could have been sent off. I think the red card might have been a little bit harsh, because the contact he makes is with leg, and then his momentum then takes him up to face. I don't think he meant to catch Lukic in the face, but a different referee would have deemed that differently. He could have gone, Imagine he's got sent off. Lukic himself absolutely should have been sent off already on a yellow card. Fouled Vissa on a clear breakaway, which is the clearest yellow card you'll see all season. And Anthony Taylor, who I'd said to you, I thought he did the Arsenal Man City game really well a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, he absolutely bottled it. Bad. It's just the lack of inconsistency. There's no referee.
Lack of consistency as opposed to lack of inconsistency.
Thank you, Suj.
Double negatives.
Yeah. I mean, they are a fucking double negative, both of them referees. There's no referee doesn't book Vissa in that circumstance. Ever. And Taylor's he wasn't getting to the ball. It's a nonsense. It's a yellow card all day, every day. Not that I want to see a player sent off in the first half of a match that I'm particularly watching between two teams. I'm not bothered what they do. Was a back four as we can expect from Brentford, and I think we can expect back fours in the double for them, and probably game week 28 as well. Then game week 29 for their double, probably shift back to back five. Back five might actually, ironically, with more difficult fixtures, could be good for Henry's offensive stuff. But that cross he put in from Bumo in the first couple of minutes last night was an absolute blinder. Damsgaard played. I thought he played quite well. And Jensen, who scored, played quite well. They're both reasonable FPL prices. Jensen's 4.8, but again, how are you not investing in a Brighton player for a little bit more, for example? Fulham started with Solomon, who scored again, and he's worth watching. He's only sort of I think it's 4.9, I want to say. They obviously will have a double at some point with Liverpool. It's probably likely to be 34. The problem is, if you look at the bench boost then, and I'm sure some will set to that, the double would be City and Liverpool. But I think for 4.9, sitting on the bench, you should have 4 points there as the minimum. And if you get something on top of that, absolutely great. Paulinho obviously remains suspended for the Arsenal game. And then he'll be back for the fixture in game week 29 against Bournemouth. And that is a big concern that he'll be out because it's just not the same. That said, Brentford go quite direct quite a bit, and Paulinho is particularly good at sweeping up second balls and stuff. Arsenal won't do that in quite the same way. They're not going to ping the ball up to Martinelli at head height against Ream and Diop, for example. So the game will take on a different manner. I would hope that Fulham very much set up to counter-attack on Arsenal and don't allow space in those areas. If they do, I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal go down and win comfortably, to be honest, as Paulinho is out. Brentford managed the game very, very well in the second half. And I will probably captain Tony this week. Is that your thought, Suj?
Don't know. Not going to buy. So no.
Okay. Who do you intend to captain this week?
So
Evan Ferguson.
No.
which is not the worst idea, by the way. He's in the team at the moment.
Ferguson, March, or Mitoma. Let me decide closer to the time. A Brighton player is all I can say.
Good for you, sweetheart. No interest in Tony.
Well, you said that you're not going to do it.
No, it'll be Tony or Mitoma for me. At the moment, I'm leaning into Tony. Some of those Brighton numbers I saw last night are a little bit scary, I have to say. And it might, if I take the -4, Captain Mitoma might make me feel like it's justified a little bit more. I know that's not what should take the reasoning, but it would justify it a little bit more, arguably. No, I'll probably still go Tony, I think.
Yeah, to get Tony, because I'm not selling Ferguson, I'd have to sell Kane, not going to happen, or Haaland, and that's also not going to happen. So
why will you not consider selling Haaland?
Just the Crystal Palace game. Like, I look at it over the last. He's blanked against Forest. That was 3 games ago. He blanked against Tottenham. They were rubbish against you. He blanked against Manchester United. Other than that, he's returned in every game. And I know some of them are just single little assist here or there, but I just think City.
In the next 3 game weeks,
I would sell him the week after more than I will this week.
But the next 3 weeks, Tony's got 3 fixtures on him. He's got an extra fixture on him in each of the next 3 game weeks. You ain't going to captain Haaland. Yes, what's the fear? Is it value? I understand that. Like, if it's value. I don't want to, because Haaland is going to get sold over these next few weeks, particularly when people see that blank of 28. Remember, we're all engaged, right? A lot of people aren't. When I say engaged, I don't necessarily mean in terms of partners. I just mean in terms of to the game. But a lot of people will see the blank 28 and then go, "Oh shit, sell him." Tony's got an extra fixture on him every single week for the next 3. What is there? What is it? It's okay if you say, right, I've got too much value in him. We've both owned him since day 1, right?
Yeah.
I made the decision to sell him as part of this. Do you actually think, how many of the next 3 weeks do you think Haaland outscores Tony? And I realise he's on 8 yellows as well, but
I wouldn't surprise me if all of them.
You think Haaland outscores Tony in all of them?
It wouldn't surprise me if it was all of them. I think
Tony will have to get sent off in 28 for that to happen, mate.
Yeah, it's. I suppose there's a little bit of fear with FOMO with Haaland that's still there, and knowing that I want to get back to it in game week 30. But the thing is, if I
you're talking about maybe wildcarding in 30, no?
Yeah, possibly. But now I'm talking about maybe moving on Van Dijk, moving on Haaland, moving on Odegaard, moving on Pereira, moving on Nico Williams, moving on Rico Lewis. I'm into wildcard territory there all of a sudden. And I'm not sure if that's the strategy I want to go with this week, if I'm honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Cool. Well, we are now into squeaky bum time, James. So I will pull up a couple of questions on Twitter and see if I can find any funny ones. I'm sure there's got to be a couple with the wildcard madness of this weekend.
Come on, roast me. I'm here to be roasted. I'm ready for it.
Well, I'll see if I can. There's only 19 questions in there. I don't know if there'll be any.
That's because we keep skipping this bit, so people stop responding.
What the listeners got to look forward to for the rest of this week, mate?
Obviously, you've got yesterday's clash of correspondence. Obviously, was recorded prior to Brentford's win against Fulham, talking about Southampton Brentford assets. I don't think there was anything in that game last night that would have changed Tom Med's opinions on Brentford assets going forward to this week. Tomorrow, Sky Fantasy Football. Thursday, another clash of correspondence for you. I know everyone wants to hear from Sam, so yep, it's lined up for you. FPL Seagull, Mig Tavius, Sam Murray and Mig, Brighton Palace on COTC Thursday. I'll be streaming Friday. It's probably going to be 12 o'clock. Ask James, but that's subject to change. There will be a deadline stream this week as well. I'm fairly sure it's a Saturday morning deadline. Suj, yes, it's a 10 a.m. Saturday morning on YouTube. Patreon content this week. We did a Q&A yesterday. We've already released our podcast today. UCL Fantasy Preview. Angus McPhail very kindly came and joined me for that. Tomorrow we've got a quiz to celebrate Manchester United's maulings by looking at some Premier League maulings. Thursday we'll do Tottenham, so the latest on Spurs following the Champions League game against Milan, and if Suj really thinks that David Moyes deserves the boot now. And Friday, we'll have our Game Week 27 preview show.
Chris,
if you want to support the show, Serge,
you can head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL. It's quite early in the month. There's lots of good content. I'm looking forward to your Talking Tactics this week about the 7-0 game at Anfield. And you get a bunch of other content as well. Depending on what tier you sign up to, you might be able to listen to some of our previous content as well. So we'd love to have you over there as part of the Slack community that we have. So patreon.com/Planet FPL. Chris Wood says, does that go down as the most gut-wrenching game week for wildcarders in the history of FPL?
Yeah, I think so.
Got to be up there.
I think so, because, I mean, if I reflect on, we've all had bad beats in FPL. Every single one of us will have had a bad beat. And I know a lot of people will be suffering mentally at the moment. It does affect people. We know that. I reflect on some of the bad ones I've had. You think of the Havertz against Salah last year, the 1 point Sadio Mane triple captaincy. This, because it was the wild card and you're changing the team, feels like the worst one. It's also knowing that and so many other people are going to wild card this week and they've got the 20, 30 point gain on last week by doing nothing. That's gut wrenching when you put the effort and the work in, etc. And that's not to say those who didn't wild card didn't. You know, you made the decision not to wild card. Loads of people did. But you think when you make a wild card, you do think, I really should be making shit better here. What I would say is, for me personally, and it's not to say this is for everybody, but what I went through at the start, it's not look at me, but the game week on what happened over the weekend could have been very, very different just based on my players returning, to the extent that if they returned, Maddison, Odegaard, Saka, Iheanacho, Watkins is ridiculous. That there's nothing out of those particular players. You could arguably throw Rashford in that as well, but he's owned by nearly everybody. The fact they've not returned, it's a joke based on what happened in those games. So even though I'd got rid of all the Liverpool players, if a couple of them had returned well, still match it. So it was gut-wrenching to have it go against. It probably feels like the worst one for me. Yeah. But it wasn't what bothered me most. It was bothering me. I was watching the game going, fucking hell, there's no way my team's finishing above Liverpool. That was what was going through my head. And to be honest, it got to a certain stage of the game where I don't know if you're like this, but when a team's getting properly battered, I'm a bit sadistic in the sense that I like to see them get really, really battered. So when it got to 5-0 and stuff, even though Liverpool have won at that point, don't make no difference to me. I was thinking, yeah, destroy them a little bit. Yeah, I wasn't thinking let the pain stop. I was thinking destroy them.
Yeah. Athletic Koi, and this is the last question of the show, James, is quite like Fulham's away kit yesterday. Therefore, not including Spurs or West Ham, who has the best kit this season? I'm not averse to Arsenal's black and gold. I quite like that. I'm a fan of black kits generally.
It ain't that.
Yeah, I like black kits. There's too much gold on it for my liking.
I'll tell you whose kit I like this, and this will surprise people because it has got red in it. I think Palace's home kit's great this year.
With the kind of paint.
It looks like it's coloured in.
Stripes. Yeah.
I quite like
marker
that.
pen or something. Yeah, I don't mind that. Our third kit this season has really polarised a lot of people with the white with the orange flames coming up from the bottom. I'm a fan of it, but I get a lot of people
You're the only one, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like it, but I feel like it's quite a nice colour, and I'd have it as a T-shirt without the sponsor across the front.
I should say, if there's anyone from Tottenham listening as well, like, if we do have to change our kit away from home, which we'll have to do at Southampton in game week 28, perfectly understandable, can we at least play in the light blue and look fairly respectable while we're getting our pants pulled down away from home, rather than the snorkel
neon kit? The neon one.
No one even knows if it's blue or purple and what's going on there. Yeah.
I know the yellow's pretty fucking bright, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, still can't see each other to pass the ball to each other though, so it don't make no difference.
Right. That's a wrap for this episode of Planet FPL. Thank you so much for tuning in, lending us your ears, and if you're on YouTube, your eyes as well. Loads of content coming at you this week. So make sure you stay safe, look after yourselves. Don't over stress it. If it wasn't a good week, you've got plenty of time to bounce. I should say,
on a serious, because I did part mention it, but if anybody's really struggling with a bad beat, that's why my DMs are open. Like, come and talk to me. I will openly listen. If someone wants to send me a screenshot with the thoughts of my Green which makes them wildcard, no, you come to that decision yourself. That's why my DMs are open. So if anyone wants to talk it over, like generally, come and say hello.
Lovely jubbly. Stay safe, look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
As ever, guys, be nice to each other, please, and play it your own way. Cue music, please, man child.